What I'm offering to you today is a synopsis of what I offered at the TASS live conference. So welcome. So we are today talking about a trio communication faculty partnership. And this is what I call student persistence and success through collaboration. So we're first going to look at a historical overview of TRIO itself, and then we're going to look at what the research tells us about TRIO and programs such as TRIO and faculty and staff working in partnership on campuses. And finally, what I'd like to offer you is what we did and what we're still doing at Broward in terms of partnership between my department, which is the communication department at Central Campus, and TRIO grants at Broward College. So what I'm hoping that you'll take away from this is you'll be able to understand the role that TRIO programs play in student persistence. And then I'll explain Vincent Tinto's model of institutional departure. Next, I'll hopefully relate student persistence to formal and informal interactions. Well, that's with faculty and staff, and then connect those student persistence to faculty and staff engagement with students, and then conclude with understanding that working collaboratively with programs such as TRIO, and there are others like grant programs that may not be TRIO, and that will lead to higher student persistence. So why? My why, I'm Carol Hogret. I'm an associate professor in the communication department at Broward College at Central Campus. I teach speech communication. My first love, though, is student life skills. I like to call them student success skills. So I also help to develop curriculum for student life skills specifically. I do some with speech communication, but a lot with student life skills. And recently I've developed workshops and training and conferences that are kind of, developed from the student life skills courses for the TRIO grants, and most recently for the nursing faculty and students at Broward College. And these are workshops to help students be successful in college. So what's my call to action here as a speech faculty? Well, I'm hoping that you'll be convinced that all members of the institution that you belong to, college, university, school, must be involved with student persistence in order for students to be successful. So here's a question for you. Who's responsible for student retention and student persistence? Is it the student support staff? Is it the student retention specialists? Is it the faculty? After all, we're the front line, right? Or is it everyone? Well, you guessed it. Everyone is responsible for student retention and student success, from the groundskeeper who may be mowing the lawn when a student comes up and the student wants to know where financial aid is or where admissions is, and the groundskeeper gives a friendly response, to the president of the institution. And I would say that faculty especially are extremely important, along with how students interact with support staff, especially their initial interaction. This is what will determine a student's experience right off the bat. So let's take a brief walk down memory lane in terms of TRIO programs. In 1964, the actual Higher Education Act was established and the first Upward Bound program was established. In 65, then we saw the advent of the TRIO Search program. And then in 69, we saw the Student Support Services programs be developed at institutions across the nation. Now, in 1972, we saw the reauthorization or the Higher Education Act amendments that allowed for the educational opportunities. And what I neglected to talk about in 68 was the word TRIO came from those three grants: the Upward Bound, the Talent Search, and the Student Support Services. That's how the word TRIO came about, and it became a household name in colleges and universities across our nation. So, to continue, in 1976, we saw an amendment that allowed for what was called the training programs for federal TRIO. And that happened in 76. In 86, we saw the Ronald E. McNair Post-Baccalaureate Achievement Program come into existence. In 1990, we saw the Upward Bound Math and Science Program come into existence. And in 2001, we saw that the Omnibus Consolidation Appropriations Act amendment brought on the SSS programs so that they could offer financial assistance to students. Now, as you can see, this ongoing grant process has been in existence continually since 1964. At Broward College, we are no exception. We have a plethora of TRIO grants on all of our major campuses, and we provide lots of opportunity through our TRIO grants and through our TRIO programs. So let's take a look at the research. What does the research tell us? That we know whether it's qual or quant, looking at small or large institutions, we find that TRIO programs work in terms of student retention and in terms of student success, whether it's first-gen students, whether it's students who are disabled vets. There are many types of TRIO programs. There are TRIO programs for students with disabilities. We have all of these programs at Broward College, and these programs are proven unequivocally to work. And so most of the research uses Vincent Tinto's seminal work in terms of student retention and student departure. And I'm going to take a look at some that you'll see on your screen. And of course, you can read these. I don't need to read them. But what I wanted to do is just give you a cross-section of data so that you can see how these TRIO programs have been successful through the years, whether, again, it's for non-traditional students, whether it's at campuses in South Carolina or in the Midwest. All of these show that these TRIO programs work. But if they are operating in a vacuum, if there's no real interaction between staff and faculty in these programs, then they become these silos, and the interaction is not as much. So my own research, even though the research was not specifically in TRIO, but my own research, which was on helping the perceptions of Hispanic and African-American males. And this was in a for-profit institution in 2009. And these are the things that students report that they want and need from faculty especially, and this really does dovetail, or it does, it really does enhance what TRIO is talking about in terms of what they do to help students. And so take a look. And so for one of the very first findings, students want to know about their finances. And we know from what's going on in our country today when it comes to student loan debt, students were very concerned. Now, obviously, this was a for-profit, so you can imagine in a for-profit world how students were concerned. But this is also the case in public universities as well. And then they need to know that we care. They need to know that faculty care. What the TRIO programs, when you read the qualitative voices from the students, you'll hear them say how much the TRIO programs help them to feel like they belonged in institutions. And so if we faculty can show that we care and work along with the TRIO programs, retention and persistence, I think, will be stronger in our institutions. And then in my research, I found that students wanted this accelerated learning. Now, this was 2009, where a lot of the offerings were still, the full terms, and they wanted those 8 weeks because they wanted to go quicker. And at Broward College, we offer a lot of those 8-week courses and the like. So students have an opportunity to be able to choose. And so that, I think, is very, very good. And then students reported that they wanted hands-on, real-world application. Now, these individuals were non-traditional African-American and Hispanic males, but in order to make the curriculum come alive, they wanted hands-on, real-world application to what they were learning. So, according to Vincent Tinto, no student should ever find him or herself out of place or unrepresented by the interests of others on campus. Feeling out of place, however, is not solely the function of representation. It also reflects the broader campus climate and the perceptions of belonging students derive from their daily interactions with others inside and outside of the classroom, and the messages those students interactions convey about their belonging. And this is taken from Through the Eyes of Students. And this was an article from Vincent Tinto in 2015. So let's take a look at Tinto's student model of institutional departure. And here we see that students obviously come in with pre-entry attributes. And whether we think that the institution should be looking for different students or not, the fact is that we have to teach the students that are in our institutions. We're responsible for helping them to succeed, persist, and to be retained and to persist. So we also know that they have to have their own intentions and goals and commitments that we can't do for them, but they have the academic experience, and then they have their social experiences in the institution, and then they have integration. And then they have their intention and goals after integration, and then they make their decision if they're going to depart. So they have their intention and goals. This we can help them with in terms of helping them understand how to make goals. And we do a workshop on goal setting, because a lot of times students don't know how to determine their short-term goals and their long-term goals. But at this point, I think we would agree that the student then has to understand that they have to have goals to be successful in college. We can't make them do that. But what we can do is give them excellent academic experiences. And whether it's staff or faculty, we can help them with their social experiences on campus. This might mean in the cafeteria, passing them in the hall, giving them a smile. You may not remember their names if they were in a previous class, but just to say, hey, how are you doing, helps tremendously. And then when we help them with these two areas, their intention to depart may diminish. And obviously that depends on other factors. So let me give you a look at our TRIO partnership. So what we did together, working with the TRIO programs, is we determined what kind of workshops the students need. Now, the TRIO grants call for workshops and training for students. And this can be at the very beginning, and you can even do this in the high schools, how to transition from high school to college. And then, you know, there's just a whole lot of things that first generation students, non-traditional students, and other students may not know. And giving them the workshops, and you might say, well, we offer those things in the student life skills classes. It's not enough. Because we know, even with our own selves, that we have to be told over and over and over again for the information to stick. And when they get a course in it, it is the beginning. But if they get a bite-sized workshop, especially if it's interactive and something that is very relevant to what's going on with them at the time, they tend to remember it more. And even the interaction in these workshops helps the students feel more integrated and comfortable in the academic environment. So here's a list of some of the workshops that we offered last fall. And we know that the students found this to be beneficial. So let's look first at some of the kind of types of students. Now, these are not the actual pictures, but these are actual quotes from our students. So Alex graduated from a local high school, and he said, I didn't think I would attend college. I did not know much about college. Now, he graduated from a local high school, and he's saying he didn't know much about college. He said, if I graduate, I'll be the first in my family to attend and to graduate college. First in his family to attend and graduate. Now, Carlos is a 60-year-old. His kids have just gone off. He's an empty nester, he and his wife. He decided to return to college at 60 years old. And he said that he wanted to see his kids through, but now he wants to get a college degree. And then we have Alessandra. Alessandra is a 19-year-old student out of Venezuela. With all the things that were happening in Venezuela, she came to America, her parents sent her to America by herself to study. She's concerned that she doesn't speak English well, and the truth is she speaks English better than she thinks, but it's that confidence, right? And she says that she wants to become a nurse. So there again is an opportunity to really help with Alessandra to build her confidence and help her to realize that she can become a nurse. And so these are some of the screenshots that I took of the actual Instagram posts of the workshops, and students responded well to these Instagram posts. Sometimes they send out texts to the students reminding them. And we also offer, if it's a face-to-face workshop, we do it at lunchtime sometimes, and we give them pizza. If it's an afternoon workshop, and you can see that most of these were 2 o'clock workshops, we offer little giveaways to sweeten the pot. And so here's from the voices of the students. And these were actual quotes. So one young woman said, I liked the workshop. It was my first one, and I look forward to more. Another said, it was a very complete workshop with a lot of useful information. Thank you. Another student said, thank you for actually teaching us things that we should have learned in high school. And so these are actual quotes from students who participated in these workshops. From the TRIO staff perspective, here is a quote from one of the TRIO success coaches at our central campus. And he says that the way that the workshops are presented, that students learn best when they are directly involved in their learning, whether asking them questions or seeking input from their own experiences or challenges. And then I tend to give trademark quizzes and prizes, and students respond. I actually just did a workshop yesterday for our nursing student population. This was not TRIO, but this was nursing students who the Dean of Nursing asked for a workshop to help with finals, planning for finals, studying for finals, preparing for finals. There were 286 students who attended that workshop, and the evals afterwards were very, very positive. And so we also offered what we called our First Generation Day workshop in 2021. And this was in November. And we offered the students an opportunity to see first generation success stories. So we had Jennifer Sully, we had Dr. Nadia, we had Dr. Singletary, and these folks, some were faculty, some are faculty at other institutions. Dr. Singletary is a TRIO director and also a disabled vet. George Freddy Pereira is a JD and a graduate of Broward College. Dr. Amoy Reed is a dean of our pathway. And Dr. Gisela Vega is the head of the LGBTQ office at the University of Miami. And so we had many different folks giving their success journey to these students, and it was awesome. So in that, we had over 90 students in attendance. That was a hybrid where we had students in the room and we had students online. Logistically, a little nightmarish, but it really turned out to be something that students really appreciated. So what I hope that you take away from this synopsis is that you can understand the role that TRIO programs play on your campuses in student retention. And the truth is that you may not even know, or you may know, that these programs exist, and they don't have to be TRIO. They could be grant programs, or it could just be a department that needs some help in the area that you teach. If it's English, you could do a workshop in English. If it's math, you could do a workshop in math. But what I would suggest that if you do the workshops, and that's going to point number 4, I'm going to reiterate to the point number 4, make sure that they're engaging and that they are hands-on. And then point number 2 is, I hope that I was able to explain Tinto's theory of student retention and how it relates to us and how it relates to student retention in formal and informal roles. So that is in the classroom being a formal role, but walking through the hallway, being in the cafeteria, seeing a student, and ensuring that you are connecting with the student to make them feel more comfortable. And again, connect student retention to faculty and staff engagement with, and that helps with student retention. And finally, I hope that you conclude that working collaboratively with programs like TRIO will lead to higher student retention, and that you and I are an integral part of student success at our institutions. Thank you very much for attending and listening. And if you like further information, then here is my contact information. Take good care.